You've heard of matcha lattes, matcha ice cream, even matcha donuts, but have you heard of a Matchamisu? It's a Japanese twist on a classic tiramisu, and best of all, it requires 0 baking. So let's get started. So I have a little bit of milk in my medium saucepan that I'll just heat up until it starts to steam. While that's working, I'm gonna whisk my egg yolks here with some sugar and my matcha powder. Now that the milk is steaming, I'm just gonna add a little bit at a time into my egg yolks. I'm not adding the whole thing in because it's gonna cause my eggs to scramble. So just whisk it vigorously to incorporate. Now I can dump the rest in. This looks great. Finally, I'm gonna add in my mascarpone cheese, and that's what's gonna give it that creamy, cheesy texture. And you want to mix it in until the cheese is nice and smooth. Now I'm going to switch off to use my whisk so that it'll smooth out any lumps. Perfect. So now I'll set this aside and I'm going to start working on my whipped cream. I already have some whipping cream and I'll just add a little bit of vanilla extract. I'll whip it up until I get stiff peaks. Awesome, I think our whipping cream is just about done. I think we've reached stiff peaks, so when you take the paddle out, it should stand up on its own. I'm going to incorporate my matcha mixture into the whipped cream. I'll just gently fold it in one by one so we don't deflate the cream. Since the cream is nice and fluffy, it'll give the matcha cream this light and airy texture. So now I'll set this aside and work on my cake part of the Matchamisu. Our water's come to a rolling boil, so I'm just going to add my sugar and whisk it until it starts to dissolve. Looks good. Now I'll add in more matcha powder. This matcha powder is going to give our cake layer that nice earthy flavor. Now that my mixture is all combined, I'm going to transfer it to a bowl and let it cool completely before we start dipping. Our matcha mixture is completely cool, so now I'll just dip in the ladyfingers one by one. Dipping the ladyfingers into this matcha mixture will help the ladyfingers to expand into this delicious cake later. Now that I'm done with my first layer of ladyfingers, I'm going to take my matcha cream and just add a thin layer on top. I'll spread it out so that it covers each and every ladyfinger. You want a little bit of cream in every bite. Now that I've covered it with cream, I'm going to dust more matcha powder on top. And now we just repeat all the steps again. I'll dip my ladyfingers and just place it directly on that cream layer. So we're all done with the ladyfingers, and the last step is just to add more matcha cream. Doesn't the green make it look like an interesting dessert? Now I'll just pop it in the fridge for about 2 hours or until it's completely chilled. Our Matchamisu has finished chilling for a few hours, and it's going to form a little bit of a dark spot in a few areas on top, but that's alright, you can always dust it with more matcha powder. So let's dig in. Look at all the beautiful layers here. You get the cream, the ladyfinger, and you can see that it's expanded and it looks very cake-like. The matcha flavor really comes through the cake layer. This is such a unique spin on a classic dessert. You really have to give this a try.